Wow. And then he keeps on going. He goes on, this is kind of cool. This is all the places where he prayed. The Son of God came into the world, act of submission. The very first thing he did was a prayer. The gospel many times shows Christ in prayer. When his mission is revealed by the Father. These are all footnotes. These little 4 tells you exactly where that is. So, in other words, that's baptism. Boom. He prays. Before he calls the apostles at night in prayer. When he blesses God. When he's transfigured. When he heals the deaf. When he hears the breath. All these things. When he asks for Peter's confession of faith. When he teaches the disciples how to pray. When the disciples return from their mission. When he blesses little children. When he prays for Peter. All these different spots where we're like, God praying? Well, it's not God who's praying, but God made man is praying. So prayer almost like carries the Son's love for the Father back to the Father, but in humanity, in our humanity, in like words, gestures, all these things that he did. I'm watching the Son of God pray to the Father in his humanity. The work of each day was closely bound with his prayers. So that's good. And then he would retire in the desert to pray. He'd rise early. He'd spend the night. All these different times were in things that he was doing are bound up in prayers. Then he took prayer in public prayers too. In the synagogue, he was praying in the temple. In private prayer with families. He used traditional blessings of God at meals. Isn't that amazing? Just like us. Benedict, Benedict Domine nos et hic tua dona, quae tua largitate, sumus sum tuae, per Christi Domine nostrum. We learned it on the trail. Nice. Isn't that amazing? Just like Jesus. So when people say, oh my gosh, you always say the same thing, say just like Jesus.
In Latin. Just like Jesus.
As it's in Latin. He did it in Latin too.
And they were all confused.
And then, look at this. That's even said that he used a traditional thing. There. And
maybe we should learn the meal prayer in Aramaic.
That would be cool.
That would be really cool.
That would be awesome.
Get Mershan on that. We'll ask Mershan to figure that one out for us.
It'll sound a bit angry.
Other times where you prayed, look at all those spots. So that's kind of neat. You actually have 25 different spots in Scripture that you could go back to see Jesus praying. So if I was going to give you a course on prayer, well, we'd spend 4 weeks just looking at all those passages and seeing what we could find. Then it goes on to prayer in the church. Christ's prayer is continued by the church. Okay? And so this is, obviously, you're seeing we're getting very deep. We've got 6 more minutes to go. You got all that theology. Let's look at this right here because this is kind of the key. Liturgy of the hours, consecration of time. So we've gone through Christ prays, church prays. So we've seen kind of what that means. There's a lot of theology there. Liturgy of the hours, consecration of time. Christ taught us, you must pray at all times and not lose heart. Oh, so that's, there we go. So, two things that are pretty hard for us to do. Number one, pray at all times. Like, and the second thing, don't get discouraged by prayer. It's kind of neat that he says that. Don't lose heart. I know stuff. The church has been faithful in obeying this instruction. It never ceases to offer prayer and make this exhortation its own. Through him, Jesus let us offer to God an unceasing sacrifice of praise. And notice that unceasing prayer. The church fulfills this precept not only, so how do we pray all the time? Celebrate the Mass. So everywhere in the world there's a Mass being offered at some moment of the day. But in other ways also, especially through Liturgy of the Hours. So the church is like saying that the Mass and the office are the two things by which the church continually offers praise to God. So Jesus says, pray all the time. The church is like, all right, we're ready. How? Daily Mass, Liturgy of the Hours. Well, you don't usually hear this. Usually, like, prayer is always like, learn your rote prayers, a few of them. Go to Mass if you're really holy. And then adoration. But the church is like, no, it's Mass and Liturgy of the Hours. And then adoration comes in. By ancient Christian tradition, what distinguishes the Liturgy of the Hours from other liturgical services is that it consecrates the whole cycle of the day and night to God. So that's what makes it so special, is that when you're doing this, you're going to be saying the same songs over and over. And you're like, why am I just saying these things? I'm not just saying those things. I'm consecrating this time of day to God. So the evening, what do I do in the evening? Well, I need to lift it up to God. So I do evening prayer. Oop, now it's nighttime. I need to lift that up to God. We're almost like the ones that are constantly like, I got to bring God into this moment of the day and for the whole world. Because there's night all over Denver. Somebody's got to say, God, we love you in the night. That's our job. I think that's why they call it the office. Because it's the office of the monk or the priest to pray throughout the day. That's my job, in other words. Office meaning like, police officer. It's my office. I think that's why they call it that. So that's a neat way of looking at it. Of looking at it instead of like, I'm just saying these prayers again. Because then it gets beyond whether or not I'm getting something out of it, if I feel happy. It's like, no, I've got a job to do. And it's to lift this world up to God throughout the day. And I do that how? By liturgy hours. Amongst other ways. Like this. The purpose of liturgy hours is this is kind of good, the why statement. Here's the mission statement. Katie loves these things. The purpose of liturgy hours is to sanctify the day and the whole range of human activity. Therefore, its structure has been revised in such a way as to make each hour more correspond as nearly as possible to natural time and to take account of the circumstances of life today. That's Vatican II. Because back in the day, a priest just had to say it. Didn't matter when. So some guys would wait, and then like at 11:30, they would say their office from that day, and then at midnight they'd say their office for the next day. Then they were good for 2 days. I've heard that. I've never seen that. That's like an old priest type of thing. Usually by priests who are making fun of the church before Vatican II. But who knows? It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's a good idea. I just wake up, set my alarm. That's great. Do my office. It had that kind of idea. Vatican II was like, no, we want you to penetrate the day. So, like, if you didn't do morning prayer and it's now the afternoon, you don't do morning prayer. You missed it. So if it was deliberate, it's a sin. If it wasn't deliberate, it's not a sin. But you missed it. Now, that too, though, has to be attenuated. Vatican came out, a congregation of worship, and said, well, let's suppose you do the whole day and you were just so busy and you didn't get it done. Before you go to bed, you should still do lauds and vespers. So, welcome to, the flux of a church that's Latin. Just kind of dance with me. It's that and that. Yeah, the Protestants were Germans. Okay. Therefore, its structure has been revised in such a way to make each hour correspond as nearly as possible. So that's kind of neat. Hence, that day may be truly sanctified, and that the hours themselves recited as spiritual. It's best for them to create a time closest respond to each kind of hour. So the idea is really simple. It's just what I said. We're taking the morning and we're giving it to God. Then we go back, it's midday. You're like, oh, you already did it in the morning. Yeah, but it's midday now. And we're working now. In the morning, we're waking up. So the Psalms are more about, like, I'll praise you in the morning. I'll wake the dawn with my harp. Nice thoughts. Midday, it's like, God, show me your will. Psalm 118, which is kind of annoying. Your precepts are wonderful, and all your ways are right. Your precepts are great, and I just love them so much. Like, I hate this psalm. Psalm 118 is the longest psalm in the Bible. We break it up throughout the week. You do two things at a time, whatever. Why is that? Well, that's because you're in the middle of the day and you're like, should I do this or should I do that? Making decisions. So I remind myself, follow God's law. It's going to go. And then in the evening time, it's usually like, thanks God. The day's been long and I'm kind of tired. And then at night, you finish by saying, now, Master, let your servant go in peace. Your word has been fulfilled. So there's like this thing, and you're praying it not just for yourself, but for the whole world. Okay? So that's the general stuff. Yes?
If you guys need help with ribbon flipping or want to see how it's done, obviously you can ask any of us. I've got a breviary that you can borrow and look at and flip through if you want to see it. When they condensed it, they put little footnotes that were like, for this day, use and then flip to and then the next thing you know, you've got ribbons going everywhere. And So the app is really much better,
Yeah.
but
At the end of the explanation, the last page is an advertisement for the app.
it really.
That was a joke.
No,
It'd be
well,
really
we
funny,
got
like,
one of the ones
"Did
we
you find
got.
this book confusing? Buy the app.
But if you want to see like kind of all of that, or hear different orders have different songs that they sing in different, and I've got a few of them, and I've got a Dominican friend that would be more than happy to like lend you guys some of their songs as well, just so you can see like how it's done elsewhere, and that way if you end up going and working for a church that's run by that, it's not something that's so foreign, but you can kind of jump right in.
So if you see, all we covered there was like 3 things, and that was even very brief. You see how much is in here. So that's not to overwhelm you, but rather to give you a resource. And it'd be really cool to work through this, with yourself a little bit if you're interested anyway. But this would explain things, like introduction, morning prayer and evening prayer, and then it kind of talks about it, why you do it, what's so great. The appropriate hymn, the song, explain stuff. So that explanation is there. That's your general introduction. I'm going to shift over to silent prayer here. Again, the goal being to show you at the end, like, oh, there's a method to this madness. There's hope in Mudville. And I know where to go further. That place is Father Francis Therese, Father John Therese. This is also your spiritual director. But, this is stuff you'll go through for, years. You got to remember the brothers have been doing this. I just celebrated my 18th year yesterday. Venerate the brothers. 18 years.
Congratulations.
Father Francis is 15?
15.
15 years. You know what I mean? So then you're like, oh man, how do they do it? Well, if you do something for 15 years, you kind of figure it out. But it takes time. Francis de Sales gives 2 images for progress in prayer. And the first, a little bit racy, so just get, And it's a baby at its mother's breast. And he says, I've never seen this happen, but he says that certain things I just don't know a lot about. He says that the baby pushes itself against the mother's breast to get more milk. So it makes motions like this, I suppose, towards the woman's breast to get more milk. And he says that's what the soul is like in prayer. Making acts of adoration, kind of, I guess, in a rocking motion like this. It's a dated image. Maybe back then they were a little bit more comfortable talking about those type of things. The other image, he says, though, and what I thought is so clever and just wise of the saints, he says, but there's another way. And that is when you put a slab of stone onto the ground, it slowly just disappears and becomes one with the ground, just by the force of it laying there for so long. And he says, this too is how we make progress in prayer. By just being faithful to it, day in and day out, like a stone, our soul unites itself with God, irrevocably. Well, that's kind of cool, and that gives us a lot of hope. So after 18 years, I could look back and say, I actually know what it is. Yeah, I mean, I haven't mastered it, but I'm gonna. This is but how did I get there? I could never tell you. I just heard 30 hours of talks on it, and then was forced to do it every day. Little by little, you get there, and then spiritual direction. You talk about your spiritual director. Okay, so in the normal world, so we'll do the normal world, and then we'll talk about the CSJ. In the normal world, words mean the same thing. Holy hour means the same thing as adoration, which means the same thing. Well, no, holy hour and adoration. These mean the same thing. And there's this other thing that people call mental prayer. Some people, you'll hear in some texts they're spoken of as orison. The difference between these two in the normal world is the presence of the Eucharist. Now, of course, you can do mental prayer in front of the Eucharist. But these two here tend to have methods given to them. So in mental prayer, I would follow a method that would help me. This is actually a beautiful word, mental. We think of it as mind, but mens actually means kind of like spirit or soul. What all of these have in common is that there's something that's done in a personal way. There's something that's done with the heart. Okay, so like when you do a holy hour, you do adoration, there's always a period of just silence in the liturgy. So even if it's very short, like I think they call it to greet the Blessed Sacrament, or a short exposition, 10 minutes long. They'll expose a single hymn, they'll have 2 minutes of silence, and then they'll go on with benediction. Because they're like, we're just honoring the sacrament. There's always this period of silence, and that's because that's what makes this type of category of prayer special. They're like, this is you with your Savior. It's you with your heart. Now, when this personal prayer of the heart, and then I would say plus, you have some liturgy. Remember when I took you through the rite of, every day we did a little liturgical lesson with them, and I walked them through the rite of benediction. And remember, it's like, okay, so we start, we do Tantum Ergo, then the priest says the prayer that unites everyone's faith, then he kneels down, then he does the blessing. This liturgy everyone gets. You can kind of go brain dead, you're like, okay, the liturgy, nice, it's going through, we know what's happening. It's this that's really hard for us. What am I supposed to say in the silence? How do I say it in the silence? So a lot of people then, they're like, well, I'm just not going to. I'm going to say my rosary. Let's now do the chaplet of divine mercy because it's so powerful for the sacrament conversion of sinners. It's like, all right, all of that's great. I'm going to put that more over here, though, and say, what do you say when you're all alone in front of him? And a lot of people, they don't know what to say, even though they're 80 years old. Now, you don't judge any of that, because that's great. That's how people are. Maybe that's where they're at. That's all God gave them to be, and they please him very much. Okay? But at the same time, it leaves us with this kind of as the question. The reason I'm emphasizing this so much is that when you come to CSJ, these words mean something a little bit differently. Holy hour means when we, so I'll go like this, sing the Tantum Ergo. Okay? For us, it happens on Sundays and Thursdays. I think this is a French thing. I think because the French are like, okay, l'heure sainte, the holy hour, special. Why should it be special? Because we say so. So.
It's because it's in commemoration of the hour that Christ spent in the garden.
Praying. And
said, can you not remain with me for an hour? So that's the Holy Thursday bit. So
yes,
that's so we make it more solemn because of that, as a reminder that he asked us. We don't do that every day the same way, though.
Right. That's, I guess, yes, that's wonderful. So adoration, I know, but why would we do that? Why?
I just said why.
So we can make it more special, we make everything else less special?
No, because sometimes there's degrees of solemnity.
So he's got it. He'll explain it to you. Adoration.
If every day were celebrated like Sunday, Sunday would be void of its solemnity. You have these varying, and this is something that you do less
candles.
Of. Right. There's lots of ways.
It's all good.
Incense, candles.
That same word adoration we use on a daily basis, and we'll either say exposition or we'll say adoration. Okay? That means about the same thing. Mental prayer and oraison, we never use those terms. What we substitute them with is a term called silent prayer. And for no other reason than we didn't know how to translate things, and we said silent prayer sounds great. Really, it's as simple as that. I'm not even I was there. Down in Francis was like, how do I translate l'oraison? It's like, well, mental prayer, that doesn't sound good. Silent prayer, that sounds better. And then it's stuck. Simple as that. So this is not putting down CSJ. I'm helping you to understand what you're going to normally hear is here. It's just a little bit different. So when we say silent prayer, what we're speaking about is the mental prayer or oraison of the normal world in front of the Eucharist. The way that we do silent prayer is basically no liturgy. There's always a little bit. We have candles lit at the base of Mary's foot. We have 2 candles by the altar that are lit. We finish with this prayer to Mary, which we didn't do this morning.
We did it. Were you there?
I was there. I said it with great devotion. I was just testing you. But that's basically nothing. So that means if you get rid of the liturgy aspect, you're left with this. So that means that silent prayer in front of the Eucharist really becomes a prayer of my heart to God. See how that works? And it's a special kind of prayer of my heart to God because it's the prayer of the Eucharist to God.
It might be helpful to say, when we speak of adoration also in the community, we'll talk about things like acts of adoration. And so we'll go into that more, but as sort of a way to prepare ourselves to encounter God in silent prayer, we'll talk about acts of adoration. So acts of adoration are like acts of worship. But we'll talk more about that. But sometimes you'll hear the word adoration when we speak about it in preaching and things like that as this way of a creature coming back to its creator, an act of worship, an act of adoration. So not always necessarily speaking about Eucharistic adoration in CSJ when we use the word adoration.
Using 2 ways.
Adoration would be with the Blessed Sacrament exposed.
So we'll talk, we could say Eucharistic adoration.
Yeah.
For the CSJ lingo, Eucharistic adoration, there's the Eucharist. But the word adoration, we'll also sometimes use it interchangeably with the word worship.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to go adore.
Okay. But in silent prayer, the Eucharist is not exposed.
No, it's in the tabernacle.
Okay.
He's in the tabernacle. We do him with him there, and that's what makes it special.
Okay.
That's what makes it unique. It's the way that you approach him is a little bit different. But that's too much for now.
So you can't have silent prayer like just sitting at your house?
You can.
Yeah.
Okay.
But not in the CSJ lingo.
Oh, okay.
When we say silent prayer, is what we mean. But mental prayer, oraison, or you can call it silent prayer. You can do it at home, you can do it anywhere. But I'm just trying to get you to when we say silent prayer, what do we mean? We mean a technical thing.
Yeah.
It means prayer of the heart with very little liturgy in front of the Blessed Sacrament together.
Okay.
Like we do at 6:15.
You can use that term. Okay, so we got 2 more minutes. And at 2 minutes, I just want to give you a quick image that will help you infinitely in silent prayer. What's this is my famous 4-legged stool. Very famous. Here's your stool with 4 legs. This is my union with Jesus. There it is. What are the 4 legs it stands on? 4 different prayers, 4 sentences. Easy to remember. Jesus, you are here. My Lord and my God, I surrender all to you. You are my true love. So if you wanted to simplify it, you would say, you are here. You are God. You are my all. You are my love. So this would be like if you're more of a poet, you wanted to write in 1 sentence. It would say that. But if you want to be simpler, the focus is always on the you, the him. That's why I put it first. Not, I believe in you, I adore you, I hope in you, and I love you. That's what that comes down to. Faith, adoration, hope, and love. This is CSJ. This is classic Father Philippe, Brother St. John spirituality right here. You take these 4 things and you just repeat them and go and you live them like a child going up to his mother's breast from home, whatever that is. you do that over and over and over and over and over again. That's your silent prayer, concretely.
Yeah. There's no one method, of course. So if for some reason these phrases are bizarre for you, like they would be for me, there's other phrases.
There's other things.
There's the Jesus prayer. There's simply saying the name of Jesus.
This one thing. There's many. And Father.
So don't feel like if you are weirded out by this last thing, you are my love, that's somehow like the magic phrase for having silent prayer. Just in case you were scared. So that's fine.
Now, to focus you in on these, because it's so hard for us with all the evil distractions that are out there. What we try to do to focus them, we can do different things. From, you can use a rosary, to the Bible especially, to favorite prayers, to the Jesus prayer, to your body position. Okay, and there can be more. The role of these things here, though, that makes them unique is that when you're doing them in silent prayer, you're not really focusing in on them as such. You're allowing them to focus your imagination to this. Heart to heart with Christ. Which can only really be done in silence. Said in silence, spoken in silence. So, how you make that balance, and if you make that balance, and what you use and how you use it, it's all too much for now. That's the stuff that you talk about your spiritual director, we talk about Father Francis, when he goes over this in his own way. Which is probably a much better way. This is just we're in Vietnam. The Japanese are attacking. What do we tell them? They're getting shot at. I'm like, use the 4 steps.
Right. Well, so each and every one of us have our own personal relationship with God. And so it's going to look different for each of us. And that's absolutely normal. So some of this you'll obviously be able to grab onto. You can use it at the beginning. And then as you go forward, you're like, I need to let go of this, or maybe I need to emphasize. And all of that is totally normal. So this is helpful, but it's not like the only thing that will allow you to do silent prayer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Each one. Sometimes, this legged stool, you don't even do. You just sit there and you're just like Christ. And then you're just there with him.
Call on the Virgin Mary as well. It's a big Philippians, CSJ,
being
silent
Mary.
Prayer. Allow Mary to be
Father Fleet
there.
would always say, Mary's the one that teaches you silent prayer. So at the beginning of your silent prayer, you can say, Mary, teach me how to pray.
Or simply the Hail Mary, a great prayer for a silent prayer as well.
Okay. Word of encouragement to you. You guys doing it throughout the year, remember that slab. Even if it's hard and you're like, why am I doing this? I promise you. Mother Teresa said, you cannot spend an hour with Jesus and leave the same person. I love that quote. It's impossible, she said, to spend an hour with Jesus and leave the same person. And Father will teach all about poverty and all this stuff, but just keep that in mind, this is really neat. If nothing else, God, for the next 8 months, I'm going to give you an hour a day, actually 2 hours a day, of love. That's going to transform you guys in ways that you don't know now, you can't see, you can't control. But I promise you, fidelity to this is actually one of the big reasons you're at SJI. For us, prayer is not when you're not in formation. This is actually what we're giving you. And so that hard time, etc., why is it so important? Because if you could make one shift, and I'll finish with this. This is Father Nathan's key to a silent prayer. This is just me, okay? So this is what I say though. It's when you shift from me focused to Jesus focused. It's very basic terminology and expression, but it's really, by the end of the year you could be like, I'm not a Christian for me. I'm a Christian for him. When do you do that? By spending 2 hours a day where you get nothing out of it. Perhaps, right? But what you do get out of it is the most important thing. You're like, I believe in God, no matter what. Wow. What a gift that is. Right? And that's actually what we want to give you. Alright, so to sum up, we saw today two things. The Liturgy of the Hours, very briefly. The Liturgy of the Hours, we basically saw that we're sharing in Christ's prayer in the church, and it's something by which we sanctify the day by lifting up each time of the day in prayer to God. We also saw it's big, there's lots of different ways to do it. Then we went silent prayer, and we saw, well, basically, one way of looking at things anyway, it's the heart-to-heart with God. We do that heart-to-heart in front of us in sacrament with no liturgy. What do? Well, I go heart-to-heart with God. One way of looking at it would be, I go back to these 4 sentences, these 4 prayers, and say it over again.
So do we do something different during exposition or adoration? Like do you guys at CSJ World?
No. Father Philippe once made a distinction. And he said in exposition, you do basically the same thing. It's silent prayer again. But there's a different mode in the French word. He said there's a difference in that the mode of silent prayer is that he's hidden. He's not there. He's there, but he's tabernacle. The mode in exposition is that you see his body. So there's more of an act of homage and honoring of the body. Just like the mode of 10 minutes after Mass. What's that mode? Well, it's linked to in Thanksgiving. But that's really one of those things where you don't want to think too much about it, like I have to shift gears. You just want to be in heart-to-heart with Christ. And then you're kind of like, will naturally just find those different like little niches in prayer.
I think that's good, and you've mentioned it before, and I think that's very helpful. As Eucharistic focused as our times of prayer are, we like to be in the chapel. That does not mean that prayer can only happen in church. And I think that's, for me, that's huge. And you mentioned that. It's like, I can't, if Jesus isn't exposed in the blood, then I can't have a time of adoration. Therefore, I can't have a time of prayer. Well, that's false. Or I can't make it to church today. Therefore, I'm not going to have any time of silent prayer. So we have to be careful not to limit God's presence to the Eucharist, as though he were only really present in the Eucharist, and not when we're not in the church, because that would kill us.
Yeah, I mentioned it to him one day for the Assumption. Actually, it was kind of looking like it would rained on us a little bit during Mass. It was the Assumption, and I chose not to do adoration, and I explained why. We had been on an earlier site where I had taken the Blessed Sacrament, wrapped him in a poncho, and made like a tabernacle out of rocks, and it was all so that we could have adoration in the afternoon, and it was like Bree and I were there. Not that you guys were praying, but like I was like, this was not worth doing this to the Blessed Sacrament. So we kind of talked about that just a little bit, and then freedom. And our guide was Mr. Freeman. He was Mr. Mountain Prayer Man. So he was fine praying while he was fishing. He was praying while he was. No, he's joking. Okay, any questions on that? You guys, you have tons, I'm sure. We're just starting. And I would really, though, this is so important, as you can imagine, for your SJI formation. This is why you're spending the money you're spending to be here. It really is. And so, if you're lost, seek out that help. Don't just be like, I hate the adoration. What's going on? Let's seek it out. That's why we're here. And sometimes it's that individual just talking things through. Actually, it's almost always where you learn how to do all this stuff.
Cool. You guys have a quick break to use the restroom, get more coffee. The Keurig